Welcome, everybody, at another episode of the Wrestling vs. the World podcast. If you're enjoying your day, sweet. If not, what the hell ever. So today, it is time to go over the history of the WWE/Raw Women's Championship that we saw back in 2016 up until it got its rebranding a few years ago. So this is kind of picking up a little bit from the Divas Championship because that's where it got started. So at WrestleMania 32, initially it was supposed to have been Charlotte Flair defending the Divas Championship against Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch, but it was announced during the pre-show of the event that instead the Divas Championship would be retired and the winner would be walking out as the inaugural Women's Champion, not to be confused with the Women's Championship that was retired in 2010. Within the triple threat, Charlotte would win the match to walk out as the inaugural WWE Women's Champion, and during the 2016 draft, Charlotte would get drafted over to Monday Night Raw, bringing the championship with her and leaving the SmackDown brand without a championship as a whole. Charlotte's run would last just under 4 months as she would lose the championship to Sasha Banks in a singles match on the July 25th, 2016 episode of Monday Night Raw, only to then lose it back to Charlotte less than a month later at SummerSlam. And during this title reign, Charlotte's Women's Championship would be rebranded as the Raw Women's Championship, following SmackDown's inaugural introduction with the SmackDown Women's Championship over on that brand. Then, after this, Charlotte would lose the championship 43 days later back to Sasha Banks on the October 3rd, 2016 episode of Raw, only to then lose it 27 days later back in the pay-per-view rematch at Hell in a Cell, which was the first ever women's Hell in a Cell match that also main evented the pay-per-view. Then Sasha would regain the championship 29 days later on the November 28, 2016 episode of Raw in a Falls Count Anywhere match. So, both women were 3-time champions apiece by this point, but Charlotte would win the title back and end the feud at Roadblock End of the Line in a 30-minute Iron Woman match, winning 3-2 in a sudden death overtime decision. So then this run would last almost 2 months for Charlotte before losing it on the February 13, 2017 episode of Raw in an impromptu match against Bayley. Bayley's run as champion would last about 2.5 months. She would lose it to payback to Alexa Bliss, who would keep this championship for nearly 4 months herself before losing it one-on-one at SummerSlam to Sasha Banks. But then Sasha would drop the championship back to Alexa Bliss 8 days later on the August 28, 2017 episode of Raw. Then the second reign for Alexa Bliss would last over 220 days before losing it to Nia Jax at WrestleMania 34. And for Nia Jax, this title reign would end up lasting about 70 days for her before she then lost it at Money in the Bank due to Alexa Bliss cashing in her Money in the Bank contract when she just won that night after getting involved in the scheduled Nia Jax-Ronda Rousey match. So then Alexa's time as champion would last a little over 2 months from this. She would lose the championship at SummerSlam in a singles match to Ronda Rousey, and this championship reign would last over 230 days. Because then it would end at the WrestleMania 35 main event, as Becky Lynch would win the triple threat match against Raw Women's Champion Ronda Rousey and SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair, thus making Becky a double champion, giving her the name of Becky Two Belts. So Becky would have this historic reign lasting over 370 plus days. Some record books say almost 400, depending on when you perceive her title change to happen based on recording days or air dates. But Becky would hold this championship going on into the next year. Then at Money in the Bank, which would be bumped all the way back in April, Asuka would win the Money in the Bank ladder match and would win the overall contract. But then after this, on the May 10, 2020 episode of Monday Night Raw during the pandemic, Becky would summon Asuka to the ring and open up the briefcase to reveal that her contract win was not initially for the contract for an opportunity to cash in on the champion, but was actually for the championship itself due to Becky being legitimately pregnant at this time. So, based on air dates, this would end up happening Asuka's reign would end up starting on May 10, 2020, even though this was taped on April 15, 2020. So Asuka would hold the championship for about 3 months, based on, from those dates and everything. But then on the July 27, 2020 episode of Raw, Asuka would actually lose the championship to Sasha Banks in a match where the title could change hands via pinfall, countout, submission, or disqualification, and because Asuka lost the match via countout, Sasha was the new champion while also already being the WWE Women's Tag Team Champion with Bayley, thus making Sasha Banks a double champion. But then Sasha's time as champion, as we kept seeing all the time, would not last long because the following month at SummerSlam, she would lose the championship back to Asuka. So Sasha's history of constantly losing her title in a title defense, especially on pay-per-view, would continue from this point. So Asuka is champion at the time of SummerSlam. This title reign lasted 231 days, dominating the division, and would also, for some point, actually also hold the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships with Charlotte Flair when they both won the tag team titles at the TLC pay-per-view that year, but that, of course, did not last long. Now, when it came to Asuka's time as Raw Women's Champion, this would end at WrestleMania 37 Night 2, which was initially going to be Asuka defending the title against Charlotte Flair, because we know why, but instead she got challenged by Rhea Ripley due to Charlotte being unavailable for the match, and Rhea would end up winning this match WrestleMania 37 Night 2 to become the Raw Women's Champion. Title reign would last a little over 3 months before losing it in July at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view in a one-on-one match against Charlotte Flair. History is repeating itself here. But this reign for Charlotte would not last long, as the next night, on the July 19, 2021 episode of Raw, Charlotte Flair would end up having the Money in the Bank contract cashed out on her by Nikki A.S.H. So Nikki A.S.H. would pin her following the top rope crossbody to become the new Raw Women's Champion. But this title reign, unfortunately, only lasted a little over a month before losing the title in a triple threat match at SummerSlam against fellow challenger Rhea Ripley and the eventual winner, Charlotte Flair. So then this reign for Charlotte would last a couple of months, but then we have controversy here, because on the October 22nd, 2021 episode of SmackDown, we saw a bit of a heated exchange here, because following the WWE draft, the Raw Women's Champion at the time was Charlotte, and the SmackDown Women's Champion was Becky Lynch, but both women were drafted to the opposite brands. So on the October 22nd, 2021 episode of Raw, they were ordered to exchange championships now that they were on opposite shows, and we remember the tension there where the titles were getting thrown and dropped and everything like that, but this was the start of Becky now as the Raw Women's Champion after this whole title exchange debacle. So Becky's time as champion would last over 160 days from this point, before losing it then to Bianca Belair at WrestleMania 38 Night 1. So Bianca would win her first ever Raw Women's Championship, and this title reign would last almost about 419 to 420 days, depending on record books. And during Bianca's run as champion, she would actually, during the 2023 draft, get drafted over to SmackDown. But despite this, the championship would not be forced into a title exchange like we had seen prior to this. So Bianca's time as champion, as mentioned before, lasted over 400 days. Then at the Night of Champions event on May of 2023 in Saudi Arabia, Bianca Belair would lose the Raw Women's Championship to Asuka, who used her blue mist on her fingers to claw at the eyes of Bianca for a dirty win, before pinning her to become the new Raw Women's Champion. And shortly thereafter, just a few weeks later, on the June 9, 2023 episode of SmackDown, the WWE Raw Women's Championship would have its name permanently changed over to the WWE Women's Championship, no longer giving it a name, brand, recognition label for the championship itself. So yeah, we see it here. This is one of those rare times where a championship overall has not had any vacancies compared to the other women's championships that we've discussed here on the podcast. 25 title reigns overall within a 7-year period. And apparently, according to this, as a reminder, Charlotte's time as champion after winning Money in the Bank was the shortest reign overall, and the longest consistent reign without any interruptions still goes to Bianca Belair prior to losing it to Asuka just a couple of years prior. Now, when it comes to the Raw Women's Championship, who do I really think of when I see this championship? Surprisingly, for some reason, I picture the title on Sasha Banks a bit more compared to Charlotte. Maybe because, like, again, she was a 5-time champion and everything, and there was the hot potatoing of the championship. But part of me pictures Sasha a bit more with the championship compared to, like, Charlotte or anybody else on the roster. But let me know in the comment section below, what did you all think about the entire history of the WWE/Raw Women's Championship from 2016 to 2023? And when it comes to the championship, who is the person that comes to mind the most when you see this championship? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed today's episode, folks, please remember, leave a like, subscribe to the bell, turn on here on YouTube, comment what you thought below, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Thanks for watching, folks. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace out, and good day, everybody.